Expansive History of European Opera, Part 22. Contemporaries of Verdi and Wagner, Part 5. In France, Part 1. Wagner and Verdi were born in the same year 1813. Wagner lived to 1883 and Verdi to 1901. These lifespans indicate which other composers were contemporaries. In the second half of the 19th century, one man dominated the Italian opera scene, Giuseppe Verdi. In Germany at this time the Roost was ruled, absolutely, by Richard Wagner, a stifling presence and one of the most influential musicians. Not one composer dominated the French opera scene. In France the excesses of grand opera were giving way to dramas that were more modest in scale while lacking nothing in emotional impact. Charles Gounod, the master melodist of French romantic opera, created the single most popular French opera of the 19th Ken Negation Touri with Faust. Faust, 1859, by Gounod. Wagner spoke of Gounod's creation, Faust, as face powder music, which is unjust as a general judgment, but an apt image of its weakness. Gounod's music is essentially an art of the surface. But his bland, suave, lyrical line had a deep influence on French opera composers of the next generation after his own, most notably Bizet. Michela's music in Carmen is almost pure Gounod, and Gounod's operas also deeply influenced Massenet. This opera has been performed in more than 50 countries, and translated into 25 languages. It received its 2000th Parisian performance in 1934. So we have a lightweight treatment of a great romantic theme. Here is part of the glorious melody of the garden scene at the end of Act 3. The garden scene is long, varied and a tour de force. An impassioned loverly exchange, as good as any that have gone before. We come in at the end of the long duet at last, but we still have Mephisto's interference and Marguerite's declaration of love from the window, which leads to the mighty sweeping tune that really does close the act. But before the close, Mephisto eggs Faust on to grab her hand from out the window, and then, judging by Mephisto's hysterics standing outside the cottage, Faust gets inside for more than her hand. The baby arrives in the next act. Faust is sung by Paul Clark, Marguerite by Mary Plazas, Mephistopheles by Alistair Miles and is conducted by Charles Maqueras. Excerpt 1. The next excerpt from Faust. Marguerite is awaiting execution for the deaths of her mother and child, both contrived by Mephistophel. Faust and Mephistophel want to arrange her escape. Mephistophel has her in mind for hell. She refuses. After this excerpt, and I will not be playing it, a chorus of angels sing her praise as her soul rises to heaven. Excerpt 2. Ambroise Thomas similarly had a skill for emotive and languid melodies. Mignon by Ambroise Thomas. The dismal failure of Thomas La Roma d'Elvire in 1860, combined with the success of Gounod's Faust the year before, prompted Thomas to quit composing opera for the next 6 years. However, when Jules Barbier and Michel Carré, the librettists for Gounod's masterpiece and the future authors of Thomas Hamlet, approached Thomas with the Mignon story, they found the composer eager to eclipse his rival's earlier triumph. Mignon was first performed on November 17, 1866. It was an immediate success and was performed 100 times at the Opéra Comique in the 8 months after the premiere. Barbier and Carré made fundamental changes to the central character of Mignon. In the novel, she is not the main character, but by extracting her trials and tribulations from the context of the work as a whole, Barbier and Carré made Mignon the focal point of the opera. The opera plot. Wilhelm has brought Mignon and Lothario to a castle in Italy which he considers buying. There an old man watches over Mignon and prays for her recovery. Antonio relates how the castle's previous owner had gone mad after his wife had died of grief over the loss of their young daughter. Wilhelm decides to buy the castle for Mignon because it has so speeded her recovery. Mignon awakens and confesses to Wilhelm of her love for this strangely familiar place. He finally realizes that he loves her deeply and resists Philin's attempts to win him back. Lothario re-enters and informs the couple that he is the owner of the castle and that returning here has restored his sanity. After reading a prayer found in a book in the house, Mignon realizes that she is his daughter's better. The three embrace happily. The next excerpt. The highlight of the character's lovely development is done by Thomas comes in the form of her pastoral aria, presented here. Rather sentimental both in text, Mignon relates the beauty of her homeland from where she was exiled by fate. In melodic material, this is especially evident in the numerous bird effects that are used throughout the aria, and structure. A simple couplet form is used. It fits perfectly in the context of Mignon's childlike innocence and the aria's Arcadian themes. Excerpt 3. The next excerpt from Mignon. In the first act of Thomas' opera, Mignon, the beautiful Mignon is rescued by Wilhelm and Lothario from the torment and abuse of her gypsy captor who kidnapped her when she was very young. After splitting a bouquet of flowers between the two men as a token of her gratitude, she speaks with Wilhelm about her past. She tells him about her abduction, then describes her past home with such lovely details in this aria. Excerpt 4. The real innovator in France at this time was Georges Bizet, who struggled hard and long for succès in the opera house, and died without knowing that he had achieved it with Carmen, a work that has remained in the repertoire of every opera company in the world. Packed with tunes and sounds that evoke the Mediterranean with unprecedented vivacity, this hard-hitting tale of lust and murder was to prove hugely influential. The Shockers, written by Puccini and his Verismo Componegation Triots, are all the offspring of Carmen. Carmen, 1875, by Bizet. Carmen was Bizet's 10th opera, including operettas, and the last of his performed operas. Carmen was premiered in Paris in 1875 and was a disaster. It came as a shock to the first-night audience at the Opera Comique, where the traditional diet was somewhat lighter than this tale of erotic obsession and murder. But it was given the reception it deserved in Vienna, later in the same year, claiming it as a masterpiece. First performed in 1875, by 1905 Carmen had received over 1,000 performances at the Opera Comique alone. Don José's disintegration is revealed, through music that moves from the tender Act 1 duet with Michaela, via the impassioned plea to Carmen, in the Flowers Song, to the ravings of his final confrontation with his demon. This is a masterpiece of progressive characterization. The tempestuous relationship between José and Carmen culminates in one of opera's most gripping finales. The first excerpt is the flower aria sung by Nicole Gedda. Don José in his longest and finest solo piece tells Carmen of his longings for her in prison, the Flower Song. A noble impassioned quasi-aria finishing with a tremendously urgent statement of "I love you." Excerpt 5. The next excerpt from Carmen, the Gypsy Dance and Song. The gypsy girls Carmen Frasquita and Mercedes dance a sexy Spanish number for Zuniga and other officers. Tra-la-la for a wild free gypsy life, they sing. The gypsy dance begins with the entr'acte, now often played with the curtain up and the gypsies going at it in full swing. Carmen starts up with her description of the gypsies' dance, racy, heady and soon coming to merge with the dance itself. The dance gets faster and faster and ends in a whirl, dancers all as high as kites. Packs a powerful Spanish punch. Excerpt 6. The Pearl Fishers by Bizet. The one where two pearl love the same priestess with the result that two members of the triangle are nearly burned to death by the third until happily for them he repents. Pearl Fishers is one of the most underestimated operas. It is a young fellow's opera, just past being a student and not yet a mature adult. Thus, although the patches of high emotion, terror, love, guilt, etc., are all mightily effective, they are not yet deeply felt. Perhaps this is a good thing, because the story is quite clearly in the realms of the science fiction of its day and not homely stuff about people who live, do and say like us, the members of the audience. Nevertheless, the writers did a good job, for the libretto is simple, fast, clear and in its incredible way quite believable. Also original, because there are not many openers hung on a love triangle, such as this one, the triangle music theme occurring throughout the opera. Zergar loves Layla. Nadia loves Layla. Layla loves Nadia. Zergar, in a different sense, loves Nadia. An algebraic equation of relationships you don't meet with too often. The music is amazingly good. Bizet could write a tune. And he could make a tune work for him. The recurrent use of the theme of the triangle maybe owes something to Wagner, maybe not. But one thing is certain, that Wagner, with all his panoply of power, could never have invented this haunting fugitive melody. Some of the Pearl Fisher's numbers are stunningly good, great operatic writing. In addition to his heaven-sent gift of melody, Bizet at 24 was orchestrating like a wizard, organizing his material into scenes and acts like a veteran and showing that overall grasp of form which eluded Verdi sometimes and the Russians always. These qualities make Pearl Fisher's a very special opera. A beach in Ceylon. A Hindu temple visible. We are in Ceylon long before it was renamed Sri Lanka amongst pearl fishing folk. They have to choose a leader. They choose Zergar. A young one-time pearl fisherman Nadir comes out of the bushes. He says he has been on a long safari hunting tigers. Zergar is happy to meet up again with his old mate Nadir. The excerpt comes in here. Imagine you are hearing it for the first time and not for the 100th time on Classic FM. The birth of the triangle theme, heard again throughout the opera. They take a trip down memory lane to a moment where they both fell for a girl and then both swore to keep away from her so that they might stay friends. Zergar and Nadir tell the tale turn and turn about of how they were smitten by love for a mysterious woman at a temple. The easy and elegant duet is a tune to remember. At first it is hard to catch, from the flute accompaniment, but it comes out of the closet twice when they sing together, and it is glorious. The theme of the triangle. There is a burst of agitato stuff in the middle as the woman flees which makes the return of the tune even more satisfactory. Excerpt 7. Though no other French composer of the period wrote anything that packed the same sort of negation punch as Carmen, the scene in France was more diverse than it was in Italy and Germany, as there was no single composer who exerted a degree of influence comparable to that of Verdi and Wagner. Camille Saint-Saëns produced one opera that has lasted, Samson et Dalila. Samson and Delilah, 1876. Although Samson and Dalila is considered to be Saint-Saëns' best opera, and was performed on the initiative of Liszt at Weimar, it did not appear at the Paris Opera for another 16 years. There are passages where the composition rises to peaks of undeniable beauty, for example, in the love song of Act 2. Here, Saint-Saëns' special preoccupation with form is very evident. The next excerpt. The seduction. Samson soon appears. Distant lightning is still seen. He has come to say his last farewell, knowing that duty calls him to lead the Hebrews to final victory. Samson appears for his rendezvous with Delilah hesitant and struggling. He battles the conflict between the spirit and the flesh, the tension between his loyalty to Israel and his faith in God, and his uncontrollable passion for Delilah. Samson tells Delilah that his God has chosen him to lead the Israelites to victory and freedom. As a servant of God's holy will, he must break the bonds of their love. Delilah rejects Samson's God, and invokes love. What is the glory of Israel to me? The victory of your people means the end of my happiness. A greater God, stronger than yours, speaks through my words, the God of love itself. Excerpt 8. Delilah's great seduction aria followed by duet. Inevitably Samson is drawn by Delilah's protestations of love to acknowledge that he loves her too. Delilah pleads with Samson to remain, overpowering him with her sensuous and ravishingly beautiful song, Mon cœur s'ouvre à ta voix, my heart opens wide at your sweet voice, the best-known piece in the opera. Delilah succeeds in conquering Samson. His passion for her overcomes reason and his faith. He yields to Delilah's temptation, and as Delilah ends her song, Samson joins with her, vowing, Dalila, Dalila, je t'aime. Delilah, Delilah, I love you. In this excerpt I have joined two different recordings starting with Shirley Verret and leading to Placido Domingo's duet. Excerpt 9.